The dolphin first appeared beside Mara Bennett just after sunrise, a silver shape sliding through the blue water so silently that, for one startled second, she thought she was looking at some trick of light beneath the reef. She was 36 years old and had spent half her life underwater, but the sea still had 1,000 ways to surprise her. That morning, the Caribbean lay flat and bright beyond the small research boat, a sheet of liquid glass broken only by the lazy rise and fall of the swell. They were anchored off the eastern side of San Esteban Cay, a protected reef system nearly 10 miles from the mainland, where coral towers rose from the seabed in colors so vivid they sometimes seemed unreal. Violet sea fans trembled in the current. Yellow tube sponges reached up like clustered candles. Schools of blue tang flickered over the coral heads like sparks. Mara should have been concentrating on her survey slate. The storm 3 nights earlier had torn through the cay hard enough to rip mooring lines loose and scatter floating debris across part of the reef. Her team had been sent out to document damage, assess coral breakage, and check whether any ghost nets or illegal fishing lines had snagged in the shallows. It was routine work, if routine work could still be called that when it involved sinking into water this clear, this alive, this beautiful. But when she turned to measure a stand of staghorn coral, the dolphin was simply there. It hovered just outside arm's reach, angled slightly downward, its skin pearl gray with darker shading along the back. A long white scar ran near the base of its dorsal fin, old and healed smooth. Its eyes, dark and startlingly intelligent, fixed on her face with a focus that felt almost human. Mara stopped moving. Through her regulator, her own breathing sounded suddenly loud. The dolphin clicked softly, tilted its head, and came closer. Back on the boat, Captain Eli Navarro had mentioned seeing a small pod near the cay at dawn. Bottlenose dolphins often pass through these waters, riding the channels between reefs, sometimes curious about boats and divers. Mara had photographed them before. Usually they kept a polite distance, circling once or twice before vanishing into deeper water. This one did not vanish. It nudged the side of her tank. Not hard, just enough to make her twist in the current. Mara frowned behind her mask and lifted a gloved hand as if to ward off a playful dog. "Not now," she muttered, though the words dissolved uselessly into bubbles. The dolphin circled once and came back. Again it touched her, this time more insistently, pressing its rostrum against her upper arm and steering her a foot sideways away from the coral shelf she had been approaching. Mara glanced toward the boat above, where the sun turned the underside of the surface into hammered silver. Her dive partner, Jonah Ruiz, was 30 yards away to the south, photographing a broken section of reef. He hadn't noticed. The dolphin clicked again, sharper now, then swam directly in front of Mara, blocking her path toward the outer ledge. It was strange enough to cut through her professional calm. Wild dolphins were curious. They were not usually persistent like this, and this one did not feel playful. Its movements were quick, taut, agitated. It kept turning its head toward the reef wall and then back toward her, as if checking that she was still following or not following something. Mara looked past it. The shelf she had been swimming toward dropped into a narrow channel between coral ridges. Beyond that, the reef fell away into deep blue. It looked perfectly ordinary. Still, something made the skin between her shoulder blades tighten. She kicked forward cautiously. The dolphin rammed her harder, not enough to hurt, but enough to push her off course. Her fin struck open water instead of coral, and her survey slate swung from her wrist. Mara stared. All right, she thought. That's not normal. The dolphin swung in front of her again, almost frantic now, clicking rapidly and sweeping its tail in short, powerful bursts. Then it turned back toward the reef, wheeled, and shoved at her chest. For the first time that morning, Mara stopped treating the encounter like a curiosity and started paying attention. She hovered where she was and looked carefully. It took her several seconds to notice what was wrong. There were fish everywhere on the reef behind her. Angelfish, wrasse, parrotfish nibbling at coral, but in the channel ahead the water was strangely empty, no flickers of movement. No hovering baitfish, no grazing reef life. Just an eerie pocket of stillness near the shadow beneath the ledge. Mara felt a cold pulse of instinct. Predator. Her gaze moved lower, tracing the contours of the shelf. At first, she saw only coral and shadow. Then the shadow moved. A massive shape peeled itself from beneath the overhang with such smooth, terrifying force that Mara's whole body locked. Stripes ghosted across gray skin, broad head, heavy shoulders, dark, unblinking eyes. Tiger shark. It had been lying in ambush inside the shadowed cut, nearly invisible against the reef. From where Mara had been heading, she would have drifted right over the channel before seeing it. The shark came forward 3 feet, then paused, reading the water. The dolphin slammed into Mara again, driving her backward. This time Mara didn't resist. She kicked hard for open water, pulse thundering, and the dolphin stayed between her and the reef, tail beating in quick defensive bursts. The shark turned once beneath the ledge, slow and deliberate, then slid back under the overhang. Mara's heart hammered against her wetsuit. She spun, found Jonah, and banged her tank with her dive knife. He looked up instantly. One look at her frantic signals, and he came toward her fast. Together they backed into the open sandy patch nearer the mooring line. The dolphin remained with them until they started ascending. Then it wheeled sharply and dove back toward the reef ledge. Back on the boat, Mara tore off her mask and sucked in hot, shocked breaths. Jonah climbed in after her. "What happened?" "Tiger shark," Mara said. Captain Eli, weather-browned and calm in the way only men who had spent 40 years at sea could manage, turned sharply from the helm. "Close?" "Too close." Jonah frowned. "I didn't see it." "You wouldn't have." Mara looked back at the water, chest still tight. "The dolphin kept pushing me away from the ledge." Eli blinked. "A dolphin?" "Scar near the dorsal fin, adult female, I think. She wouldn't leave me alone. She was trying to keep me out of that channel." Jonah gave a disbelieving laugh born mostly of adrenaline. "You're telling me a wild dolphin saved you from a tiger shark?" Mara would have laughed too on any other day. But then something broke the surface 50 feet off the stern, a smooth gray back, a dorsal fin with a white scar, and the dolphin rose in a burst of spray. Not playing, not feeding, calling. A high, sharp whistle cut across the water. Then it dove again and resurfaced closer to the reef ledge. Eli lowered his binoculars slowly. "It's waiting." Mara looked at him. "For what?" The dolphin surfaced again, slapped the water once with its tail, then circled back toward the same stretch of reef where the shark had hidden. Jonah's expression changed. "That's not random." Mara felt the same cold certainty she'd had underwater, only now it came with something else. Need. The dolphin hadn't just been pushing her away from danger. It had been trying to tell her something. "I'm going back down," she said. Eli stared at her like she'd lost her mind. "Absolutely not alone. We don't have to get close, just enough to look." "With a tiger shark under that ledge?" Mara pointed. "Then why is she still there? If she just wanted to protect herself, she'd be gone." Jonah was already checking his tank pressure. "We do a quick drop. Keep to open water, no heroics." Eli swore under his breath, then grabbed the radio. "I'm calling the Marine Patrol." 10 minutes later, Mara and Jonah were back in the water, this time with pole cameras, shark deterrent devices clipped to their belts, and strict instructions from Eli not to be stupid. The dolphin appeared almost immediately. She did not ram Mara this time. Instead, she circled both divers once, then swam toward the reef shelf, pausing every few yards to look back. "Follow me," Mara thought absurdly. And they did. They stayed high, well above the ledge, cameras angled down. The shark was still there. Mara saw it first on the monitor attached to Jonah's pole rig, a huge tiger shark cruising beneath the overhang, turning restless loops in the channel. But the camera also showed something else farther in, wedged against broken coral and a half-collapsed section of old fishing net. Something small, gray, moving weakly. Mara's entire body went cold. a dolphin calf. The little one was tangled in the ghost net by the tail and one pectoral fin, trapped inside the narrow reef cut. Blood clouded faintly around the net where the line had cut into its skin. Every shift of the current tightened the mesh. The calf was alive, but barely, and the tiger shark was circling in the only open approach to the trapped animal like a patient executioner. Jonah hissed through his regulators so sharply Mara heard it through the water. They rose without a word. When they broke the surface, Eli was already leaning over the rail. "Well?" Mara ripped out her mouthpiece. "There's a calf trapped under the ledge." Eli swore. Jonah added, "Ghost net. The shark's guarding the channel." The scarred dolphin surfaced beside the boat and whistled again, frantic, then turned in a tight circle. "She knew," Mara said, stunned. "She knew we'd understand." Marine Patrol arrived 15 minutes later in a fast, rigid hull boat carrying Ranger Luis Ortega and 2 additional divers trained in net entanglement response. They listened in silence while Mara explained what they'd seen. No one argued about whether dolphins could intentionally seek human help. No one there had time for that kind of philosophical hesitation. There was an animal trapped, a shark in the area, and a narrowing window before stress or blood loss finished what the net had started. Luis made the plan quickly. They would use the patrol boat to hold position above the channel and create noise disturbance while Eli's boat stayed outside the reef line. One diver would watch the shark at all times, 2 would descend to the net, a third would stay higher for backup. The moment the calf was free, everyone would clear the area. "You don't go in," Luis told Mara. She stared at him. "I found it." "And I appreciate that, but this is protected wildlife response now." The scarred dolphin surfaced again beside the patrol boat, blowing hard, then vanished. Mara looked at the water. "I'm going," she said. Luis's jaw tightened. "Dr. Bennett, I know the exact layout of that ledge. I was already inside the channel view. I'm the smallest diver you have, and I can get closer to the mesh without breaking coral. If you want that calf out fast, I'm your best chance." Jonah surprised her by saying, "She's right." Eli muttered something in Spanish that Mara suspected was not flattering, but in the end Luis nodded once, sharply. "Fine, but you follow orders exactly. The second I call you up, you come up." 3 minutes later, Mara rolled backward off the patrol boat into water that suddenly felt colder than it had all morning. Below her, the reef spread out in layers of turquoise, cobalt, and shadow. Luis descended on her left. Jonah stayed higher, scanning the open water with the Shark Watch device. The scarred dolphin appeared again almost instantly, accompanied now by 2 other adults from the pod. They kept a nervous perimeter around the channel, darting in and out, clicking constantly. When Mara reached the ledge, she could see the calf clearly without the pole camera between them. It was very young, probably less than a year old. Its skin was marred by tight lines of net around the tailstock and fin. Its breathing looked too fast. One wide, dark eye turned toward her, full of stress and exhaustion. The mother dolphin, because that was what she almost certainly was, came so close Mara felt the pressure wave of her movement. She stopped just outside the channel, unable to approach farther because of the shark. The shark itself was nowhere visible for 2 awful seconds. Then Jonah's tank rang once overhead, left. Mara turned. The tiger shark was making a slow pass below the mouth of the cut, not charging, just circling with dreadful patience. Luis moved between the channel opening and Mara while she went to work. The net was old monofilament and green nylon rope snarled through coral branches. Cutting it without slicing the calf or worsening the entanglement required maddening care. Mara worked with 2 line cutters and gloved fingers, sawing through 1 strand at a time. The calf jerked twice, panicking at the touch. Each movement made the mesh bite deeper. "Easy," she thought desperately. "Easy, baby. Just a second more." Behind her, Jonah banged his tank again. The shark had come closer. Luis extended his shark stick and held his position, body taut as wire. Mara cut through the loop on the pectoral fin. One section loosened and floated upward. Good. She reached for the deeper line around the tail. It was wound twice through broken coral and buried under the calf's body. She wedged herself lower. The calf made a sharp squeal. Then the current shifted, carrying a stronger thread of blood into the channel. Everything happened at once. The tiger shark turned. Jonah shouted through his regulator and kicked downward. Luis pushed forward with the shark stick. Outside the cut, the adult dolphins erupted into frantic clicks. The mother slammed the water so hard Mara felt the concussion even underwater. The shark surged, not a full charge, but a testing rush toward the opening. Mara's hand shook. The line cutter slipped. She forced herself to breathe once, twice, then found the buried strand and hacked through it. The last loop snapped free. For a heartbeat, the calf did not move. Then it bolted, straight past Mara, so fast its flank brushed her shoulder and shot into open water. The mother was there instantly, turning beneath it, guiding it upward with her body. The other dolphins closed around them. The shark lunged at the empty space where the calf had been. Luis struck its snout with the stick. Jonah dropped lower and activated the deterrent. The tiger veered violently sideways, flashing stripes and white belly, then vanished into blue. "Mara, up!" Luis signaled. She kicked backward, and the loose net wrapped around her fin. Pure panic hit like electricity. For one hideous second, she imagined the whole reef pulling her back into the cut while the shark circled around. Luis saw it immediately. He grabbed the net, cut once, twice, and the snag gave way. Mara shot upward harder than she should have, forcing herself to slow only when training cut through terror. When her head finally broke the surface, she tore out the regulator and gasped. Eli hauled her aboard with both hands. "Breathe first," he ordered when she tried to speak. Jonah surfaced seconds later, then Luis. The patrol crew dragged in the loose net they'd managed to free from the reef. Out beyond the bow, the dolphins surfaced together. The calf was alive. It swam weakly, close against the scarred female's side, but it was moving under its own power. The mother lifted partly from the water and slapped down in a shining burst of spray. No one on either boat said anything for several seconds. Then Eli removed his cap and wiped a hand over his face. "Well," he said roughly, "I'll be damned." Mara sat on the deck with her fins still on, hands trembling so badly she couldn't unclasp them. Her whole body was flooded with aftershock, fear, relief, awe, a delayed realization of how close everything had come. Luis crouched in front of her. "You all right?" She nodded once. Then, because it was easier than answering honestly, she asked, "The calf?" He looked back toward the water. Still surfacing, good breathing interval, better than I expected. As if in answer, the mother dolphin appeared again near the stern. This time she was not frantic. She rose beside the boat, the scar by her dorsal fin catching the sun, and held there just long enough for Mara to see her clearly. Then she dipped her head once and vanished. Jonah sat down heavily on the deck beside Mara. "I don't care what anyone says," he said, voice unsteady. "That dolphin brought you there on purpose." Mara looked at the patch of sea where the mother had disappeared. "Yes," she said quietly. "She did." They spent the rest of the day documenting the ghost net, reporting the shark presence, and working with Marine Patrol to remove additional debris scattered across the storm-damaged section of Reef. The tiger shark was not seen again, though everyone remained jumpy every time a shadow moved below the boat. The freed net turned out to be part of a larger illegal set, likely torn loose during the storm and driven across the reef by current. More sections were found snagged farther down the slope. By sunset, Mara was exhausted enough to feel hollow. But when the boat headed back toward the mainland, a small pod of dolphins appeared off the port side, riding the wake in the gold wash of evening. Among them, one calf stayed close to a scarred female, rising and falling beside her in neat, synchronized breaths. The crew fell silent watching them. Eli slowed the boat. For several glorious minutes, the dolphins kept pace, turning just beneath the surface where the last sunlight turned them into moving bronze. The calf surfaced once, twice, stronger now. The mother came up beside it, then angled her head briefly toward the boat before the pod peeled away and vanished into the open sea. That night, after the gear was rinsed and the reports filed and the adrenaline had finally started to drain from her body, Mara sat alone on the dock behind the research station with her feet hanging above the black water. She had been coming to sea for years because it was the only place quiet enough to hold the parts of her grief she never quite knew what to do with on land. 7 years earlier, her younger brother Ben had died during a freediving accident off the Florida coast. He had loved the ocean recklessly and beautifully. Mara had loved him with the protective frustration only older sisters understand. Since his death, she had built her life around science, procedures, data sheets, training, discipline, everything measurable, everything controllable. The sea had taken enough from her. She would meet it with caution, competence, and no illusions. But that morning a wild dolphin had looked into her face and trusted her. Not because humans were kind, not because nature was sentimental, but because desperation had recognized possibility. Because somewhere inside another intelligent, frightened mother, there had been an understanding that this strange air-breathing creature in a mask might help if she could only be made to see. Mara sat with that thought for a long time. The next weeks brought interviews, paperwork, footage reviews, and more attention than anyone on the team particularly wanted. Marine Patrol used the incident to launch a larger ghost net sweep through the K system. Several damaged reef patches were cleared. A local conservation fund paid for new mooring buoys so illegal anchoring would be less tempting in bad weather. The story traveled farther than Mara expected. People loved the headline version. The dolphin who saved a diver, the diver who saved a calf. But what stayed with her was quieter and more unsettling than that. The terrifying thing hadn't only been the tiger shark waiting in the shadows. It had been how close disaster had come to going unseen. A net no one reported, a calf trapped under coral, a shark drawn by blood, a diver one wrong kick away from drifting over the ledge. A life-or-death chain of events hidden beneath a surface that, from the boat, had looked calm and harmless, and one wild animal had refused to let it stay hidden. Nearly a month later, Mara returned to the same reef at first light with Jonah and Eli to finish the final storm damage survey. She slipped into the water with a strange tightness in her chest, half hoping and half telling herself not to expect anything. The reef looked better, still scarred in places but alive. She had been underwater perhaps 15 minutes when she heard the faint burst of clicks behind her. She turned slowly. The scarred dolphin was there, and beside her, slightly smaller but unmistakably strong, was the calf. It hovered close to its mother, bright-eyed and sleek, the wounds along its tail now healed into pale marks. The calf swam one curious loop around Mara, then darted back to the female's side. The mother remained a few feet away, calm and watchful. Mara did not reach out. She only floated there, breathing slowly through her regulator while the three of them regarded one another in the filtered blue light over the reef. The calf clicked once, a quick playful burst. Then the mother turned, and together they slipped into the open water beyond the coral wall, vanishing with the ease of creatures who belonged perfectly to that world. When Mara surfaced, Jonah was grinning before she even pulled off her mask. "You saw them." She nodded, smiling so hard her face hurt. "Both of them." Eli leaned on the rail with the expression of a man who had finally accepted that the universe was under no obligation to behave sensibly. "You think she came back to thank you?" Mara looked out over the reef where the morning sun was laying long, bright paths across the water. "No," she said after a moment. "I think she came back because we remember each other." And somehow she thought that was more extraordinary. Not a miracle, not a fairy tale. Just two creatures from different worlds meeting for one terrible, unforgettable moment in the same danger and recognizing, however briefly, that they did not have to face it alone. Long after the boats were gone and the reports archived, divers around San Esteban Cay still told the story of the dolphin who kept pushing a woman away from the reef. They always emphasized the shark because that was the part that made people shiver. The huge striped shape in the shadows, the sudden rush of movement, the razor-thin distance between curiosity and catastrophe. But Mara, whenever anyone asked, told it differently. She told them about the empty water where fish should have been, about a mother too frightened to leave and too desperate to run, about intelligence wearing a wild face and refusing to give up, and about how sometimes the most terrifying thing in the ocean is not the predator you finally see. It is the danger that was there all along, waiting in silence until something brave enough makes you look.